Hi everyone, this is Charlene Ricketts, aka Shark Cats, and I'm with Close to My Heart, and I want to talk to you today about taking the snap off of your stamp set envelope so it gives you more room. And this is a bin that I haven't done, or that I'm working on doing right now, and you can see that it's quite full. There's not much room in the back. I can probably squeeze one more stamp set in here, but it's rather tight. It's hard to see all the names, and they kind of get wompy jawed and they look messy. And here is a bin that I have done, and see how nice and neat they are. They just seem to naturally be a lot neater and nicer. This is my everyday life category, and I have more stamp sets in this category than any other category. And this bin was so full, it was tighter than the one I just showed you above that hasn't been done. And look how much room after removing all the snaps. I have all this room in each one of these areas that I could actually add more stamps. But I look at it, it gives me, I can actually view and go through all my stamps so much quicker, nicer, easier. They slide in and out so much more smoothly. So that's take a stamp set and come over here to my work area. First off, I have a heat resistant surface. Actually, it's a Corian cut out from a sink, and a Close to My Heart silicone back craft mat. The silicone helps keep it from sliding and stays in place. I have a cheap soldering iron. Put this camera down. I have a cheap soldering iron. Amazon, $10. And it gets very, very hot. Have a very wet piece of paper towel. You can use a sponge or a cloth. Doesn't matter. It just needs to be very, very wet, and that you don't care it gets burned, because believe it or not, this is really soaking wet and it will still burn that paper towel. I have a bottle of water so I can continue to make sure that is nice and wet, because if you do have melted plastic residue on the end of your solder tip, you want to make sure you take it and kind of clean that off so it doesn't continue burning, because it is toxic, and if that gets in your eyes, it will burn. And while we're talking about that, to help facilitate anything from getting in my eyes, I have a fan blowing back here, you can see, and it blows right across where my soldering iron is. Now there's a couple other ingredients that I have. This little craft knife I use to slip underneath the part of the snap. You'll see how that works in a minute, but it helps facilitate getting it off so you don't have your fingers in there and your soldering iron at the same time. It's just, to me, it's safer, and it makes it so much quicker. And there are 4 other ingredients that I use. One is a Sharpie, because you'll need a Sharpie to mark your envelope for cutting the slit to put your flap in so that it has a way to close. I'm using some paint chip discards from colors I didn't choose, or I picked them up at the store for selecting a paint color. But reuse the leftovers. Now they're nice little cutting mats to slide into the envelope. Next is a metal ruler. I happen to be using the Fuse Tool metal ruler. 1, because it's metal, and 2, because it has silicone feet on the back that help keep it from sliding around when you're trying to cut. And finally, I'm using a box cutter as my cutting tool. An X-Acto knife will work, but the blade is thin and flexible, and you could end up with a kind of a wavy line or a jagged line, or to me it just trying to press hard and cut through plastic. An X-Acto knife just isn't a good tool. So the box cutter works really well, and most everybody has one, or if you don't, they're not very expensive. Alright, let's get to removing our stamp. The first thing that I do is I open this stamp envelope, and I remove the actual stamp set and set it out of my work area. I put it totally aside from where I'm going to be working. Then I take my envelope, put it on my heat resistant surface, slide in the craft knife underneath the top part. See how it's stuck there? I then take my soldering iron and right smack in the middle on that little button in the middle, you hear that hiss, and I kind of melt that and I twist on the craft knife to pop that side of the snap off. So take the other part off, and be careful when you take off the back part of it. When you reach in, sometimes there's some molten plastic that's still melted and hot, and you can get burned a little with that, so just be careful with that. And now I'm going to take and do this, pop off this one, take that out. This is where fingernails do come in handy. Take out the back one, ta-da, that's done. Now I take my soldering iron, after doing both those stamps, I just kind of roll it on my little wet piece of paper towel so that it cleans off that plastic. Set that down. We're going to shift over here to my cutting mat. This way, I do it this way because I feel it's safer. I'm away from the cord and everything of the soldering iron. Definitely don't want to get burned. So, close your envelope. Take your Sharpie. Put a dot right there where that half circle meets the top part here. You're doing it right there and right here. Just a little dot. You don't need much. Open the flap and slide in your makeshift cutting mat of your paint chips. Unless you have a small little cutting mat. I had one at one time. Don't know what happened to it. Place my ruler, hold firmly because you don't want it to move. Even with the silicone feet, it can still slip if you don't have a firm hold on it. I take my box cutter and the very tip of it, I press into that top dot right next to that ruler and press because I want it to go through into the plastic. And now I pull towards me, slowly, controlled, to that next dot, and then I stop. Put my box cutter aside, my ruler aside, pull out my cutting mat, and then I check to make sure I cut all the way through from dot to dot. It did. If I found out when I was using my box cutter and I wasn't pressing the tip into that first dot real well, I would have about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch that did not cut. It scored, but it did not cut. So I was either going back with the scissors or trying to use the box cutter to cut that line, and one time I slipped and about ruined my envelope. So, that said, I then take my little stamp set here and I slide it back in to it's now snap free, and I pull open the bottom part of that and slide that little half circle into the slot, and voila, it is closed. It is flat and much easier to store and takes up less space. And I wish I'd found this sooner. Anyway, hope that helped anyone who is interested in doing that and who has a large stamp collection and wants to make more room. Have a great day, everyone.